Hey everyone, it's George from Blockchain DXB and today is the 4th of July and happy 4th of July if you are an American. Historically, it's a proud moment for America this year. Considering the Biden administration is in charge, I really am not sure if that's how an average American feels. Bidenflation is real and it's only getting worse. It started off being bad, then it is terrible and it is worse. I really was hoping that the second half of this year would have been better, but the second half of this year is much worse than any of the previous years. In today's episode, we're going to look at the cryptocurrency market and it's not looking good at all. And I was hoping that the second half of this year is promising, but the fact is, the second half of the year might just be one of the worst second half of the years of all time. Bitcoin Magazine has published quite a lot of articles, and that is to do because it is 4th of July and they are linking freedom to Bitcoin. Personally, I do think Bitcoin started as a movement towards separation of money and the state. That will eventually happen. It might take a couple of decades or maybe more. So in today's episode, we are going to be discussing few articles from Bitcoin Magazine, and regarding India, we have some news as well. The governor of the Reserve Bank of India has said some nasty comments about cryptocurrencies. Now, Reserve Bank of India is the equivalent of central bank, just a different name. Now, he may be wrong though, because he's talking about some dangers with cryptocurrencies, not necessarily Bitcoin. He does talk about the dangers of cryptocurrencies, and he's talking about that with reference to DeFi and stablecoins. Now, to be honest, you don't need to look at other cryptocurrencies. As long as you understand what Bitcoin is, then you would understand what other cryptocurrencies is not. And Bitcoin is the king. It may not be perfect, but it is still a million times better than other cryptocurrencies. Today's podcast, I will be briefly talking about what the governor of the Reserve Bank of India has said. Finally, we also have some update on 3 Arrow Capital and what the future of 3 Arrow Capital looks like. So we're going to be exploring that in today's podcast also. Regarding UAE, I have 2 news. The first news is at an infancy stage, or it might be work in progress. So the news is Dubai Investment Group is revolutionizing Hollywood with NFTs. And essentially, there are 3 parties involved. The first one is Dubai Investment Group, which is located in the most beautiful buildings in the world. That is the tallest building in the world, Burj Khalifa. And it also has BRON Studios, which is from Canada. And there's another blockchain association or company called XYZZ. I believe they manage the NFTs and blockchain, but I have no clue where they are from. The next news is from Blockchain DXB, where I go ahead and explain Bitcoin's definition. Now, every month at the start of the month, I have a session where I talk about the definition of Bitcoin. The reason being, it's so critical that we truly understand the definition and the meaning of Bitcoin. One thing which I tell all of my relatives and clients is, once you understand what Bitcoin is, you would know what Bitcoin is not. It gives you a much better understanding of other cryptocurrencies. So we'll be exploring the definition of Bitcoin. So welcome everyone, it's 8 a.m. You're in Dubai. You're listening to Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse as well. How the series of episodes in the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well. News that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other 2 news and information is related to Dubai, UAE and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse. This is followed by Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners can ask any questions from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Gulf Standard Time from the cryptocurrency world. Every Fridays at 8 a.m. Gulf Standard Time, we have an episode called Metaverse Everything, where we solely focus on Metaverse. So please check out those episodes as well. The format for Metaverse Everything podcast is completely different, and I publish a weekly report that you can also check it via my LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile is in the show notes below, or you can go to blockchaindxb.com and look at the Metaverse tab as well. Or you can also go to the Medium page and type in Blockchain DXB. So let's kickstart today's episode. 4th of July and Bidenflation is absolutely real. If you look at the numbers, these just might be one of the worst numbers that I've seen, at least since the last couple of years. The global crypto market is at $878 billion. Since the last 24 hours, it is marginally increased by 0.9%. The second matrix is the scariest. The total crypto market volume over the last 24 hours is $38.76 billion. This is a ridiculously scary data, considering the fact that it is 4th of July. People do tend to go out, people do tend to spend a lot of money, and I was hoping that this volume would be over $100 billion, but that is not the case. It is down to $38.76 billion. And to be completely honest, guys, this might be the lowest number I might have ever seen, at least in the last couple of years. The total crypto market volume since the last 24 hours is only $38.76 billion. This is definitely not looking good. Since the last 24 hours, it is down by 14.82%. The total volume in DeFi is currently at $4.03 billion. This just might be the lowest number I might have ever seen. Now, this whole DeFi movement started off after MakerDAO, and I very specifically remember even back in the day, the volume used to hold well over $6 billion or $8 billion. So this volume might just be the lowest I might have seen. So really, I'm not sure what is going on. Are there a lot of DeFi projects that are just being liquidated? So funds have been disappearing. It could be possible that the funds are disappearing out of thin air, the effects of that which we might see in the next coming weeks. Now, the DeFi accounts for 10.39% of the total crypto market 24-hour volume. The scariest volume is next, that is the volume of stablecoins. The volume of stablecoins is $35.35 billion. How scary is that, guys? Stablecoin accounts for 91.21% of the total crypto market 24-hour volume. Just to give you a perspective, the day El Salvador made Bitcoin a legal tender, the entire crypto market crashed. The volume of all stablecoins at that point of time was well over the $200 billion mark. The volume only of Tether USDT at that day was hovering around the $164 billion. I'm talking about the 24-hour volume. The 24-hour volume today is $35.35 billion. Absolutely scary. Now, this number worries me because it is very highly possible that apart from Celsius, apart from Voyager, and apart from BlockFi, there may be quite a lot of other projects that are getting liquidated. And in the next coming weeks, we might see some of those coming out in the mainstream news. The king of all kings, Bitcoin, the price is at $19,314. And since the last 24 hours, it is marginally up by 0.12%. Since the last 7 days, it is down by 9.48%. Ethereum, the king of smart contracts, is at $1,077. It is marginally up by 0.91%, and since the last 7 days, it is marginally down by 12.91%. Binance Coin is surprisingly doing better. It is at $219, considering the fact that few weeks ago we talked about how the Security Exchange Commission is after Binance and they have launched an official investigation. That has not had an impact on Binance. I was hoping that the price would be slumped to maybe 40% or maybe more. That is not the case. 2022 is definitely the year of Binance. They've been making a lot of partnerships. They have signed Cristiano Ronaldo, and they also signed the TikTok legend Lame or Lame, how you call it. So Binance is definitely having the best of year in 2022. They are marginally up by 0.34%, and since the last 24 hours, it is down by 8.09%. So the news for today is the entire cryptocurrency market volume has gone down. The entire stablecoin volume is down, and stablecoin still accounts for 91.21%. So Bidenflation is definitely real, and let's make inflation great again looks like the theme of 2022. Now, Bitcoin Magazine, on the other hand, has put up quite a lot of articles, and looks like the agenda for Bitcoin Magazine is let's make Bitcoin and freedom great again. They put up quite a lot of articles, but I'm just going to run through 3 articles which I particularly found it interesting. The first article talks about by saving in Bitcoin and holding your private keys, you can opt out of a flawed financial system and participate in the world's greatest non-violent protest. What I really liked about this particular article is that they have a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and it talks about how paper is poverty, that it is the ghost of money and not money itself. extremely valid point. And the article states that Bitcoin is freedom money. Bitcoin has the potential to bring about a new age of freedom to the world. Now, partly I do agree to it, and partly I do not agree to it. I'm from India, so I know how getting access to financial system is difficult. But if you look at someone in the Western world, Bitcoin does not solve a lot of problems. Bitcoin, in theory, solves a lot of problems for underdeveloped countries like Zimbabwe, Africa, India, but that is not the case. If you look at a lot of the holdings in Bitcoin, it still resides with first world countries. Multi-billionaires like Michael Saylor, GBT Trust, a lot of the celebrities do actually own Bitcoin, and early adopters who got access to Bitcoin are mostly from first world countries. Nonetheless, good article. The second article talks about how 4th of July is America's founding fathers and how the founding fathers wanted to create a republic based on sound money like Bitcoin. The article also talks about fiat money and economic chaos in the colonial and Confederation eras, and it talks about how the founding fathers intended to prohibit paper fiat. I really am not sure if that is the case or not, because back in the day, I'm sure that was the only form of money. If it wasn't paper, it would have either been gold or silver. No way they would have thought about Bitcoin back then, because back then I'm pretty much sure there was no cryptography, there was no computer as well. Whenever you're reading this article, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And most importantly, to know that when you're reading these articles or listening to podcasts that talk purely about Bitcoin or Ethereum, they always cherry pick information and feed you information that fits their narrative. Even in my podcast, I look at information that would fit my narrative and my podcast, so it's always better to look at information from both sides. The third article talks about how 4th of July is an opportunity to think about how Bitcoiners reclaim their own financial independence. And the article talks about how Bitcoin outwits stupidity, arrogance, inaptitude, laziness, and greed. A lot of name calling in this article. And it says that how Bitcoin is for individuals seeking sovereignty. There is no other alternative, and Bitcoin's proof of work model mirrors the American spirit. Even beyond generational hope, Bitcoin represents American grit. That's precisely the point. Bitcoin is created for the entire world, but it's the Americans who have been benefited by it. How ironic is that? Ideally, Bitcoin should have benefited people, let's say, living in Zimbabwe, in Sri Lanka, which is having the worst financial crisis, in Lebanon, even in developing countries, but that is not the case. The next news is from India. Now, India has had a hate relationship with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and the Reserve Bank of India's governor has once again warned against the dangers of cryptocurrency. A part of me does actually agree to him because he talks about some of the dangers associated with cryptocurrencies and how they print money out of thin air. This does make a lot of sense when you look at projects like Tether USDT, even if you look at Terra Luna and a lot of other stable coins. The governor's remarks were made in tandem with the central bank's 25th report. The report is well over 150 pages long, and it stressed that the threat of cryptocurrencies are real, and it calls for need for national authorities to take decisive action. So the report is very comprehensive, and it talks about everything, and there is a section in that area where it also talks about cryptoization, and it introduces central bank digital currencies. Now clearly, the report have a strong preference towards central bank digital currencies, because with central bank digital currencies, you can go and track everyone's transaction. On the 8th of this month, I have a free event taking place via Eventbrite, and this event is called Central Bank Digital Currencies, the Basics, the Threat to Freedom and its Role in the Metaverse. So please feel free to attend that session. You can register via Eventbrite. So go to eventbrite.com and just type in blockchain DXB, or drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. So there are two contrasting views when it comes to money. In the West, people look at Bitcoin as freedom of money, and there should be no government when it comes to money. In case of India, the view is that the Reserve Bank of India needs to have control over money and your spendings. Now guys, I do feel separation of money and the state will happen. It might just take a much longer time than expected, maybe a couple of decades. Currently, we are in a bear market, and historically, bear market may be a good time when the prices are low that you go and build your product. The Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index is at 11. Now, this would be the right time to get your fundings in place. So let's say, for instance, if you have got 1,000 Bitcoins as a funding from any of the investors, when the price of Bitcoin goes up, you can give them the funds, but you need to be really smart that you take the funds only in dollar terms and not in Bitcoins. The same thing can happen vice versa as well. If the inflation and stagflation keeps on continuing, Cointelegraph has just reported a few hours ago that Bitcoin addresses in loss hit an all-time high, and this was when the price of Bitcoin was $18,000. And Seeking Alpha has also written an article that confirms that Bitcoin finishes worst half year in 12-year history. So definitely not looking good for Bitcoin. And the article also talks about how this particular year has been terrible for Netflix, for Amazon, for Apple, but it's been much worse for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is down by 58%, whereas the other tech giants are down by 48%. The next news is about Three Arrows Capital. Now, Three Arrows Capital has filed for bankruptcy. Bloomberg reported that the multi-billion-dollar crypto hedge fund Three Arrow Capital has filed for Chapter 15 bankruptcy. What is Chapter 15 bankruptcy? It is a move that protects its US assets while a liquidation is carried out. In case of Three Arrows Capital, I believe they are registered with British Virgin Island. The article states that the filing stops creditors from seizing a company's assets in the US, and Three Arrows Capital are currently working with a law firm called Latham and Watkins. So definitely not a good thing for Three Arrows Capital. And Laura Shin, one of the leading podcasters in the cryptocurrency space, she also put up a snippet via her LinkedIn profile. And in that snippet, which is roughly, I believe, a minute or 2 minutes long, one of the speakers were talking about how Three Arrow Capital were literally working as a Ponzi scheme. They were taking funds from one investor, utilizing that funds to pay off another investor, and that thing kept on going on. It'd be really interesting to actually listen to the entire podcast. I believe she might be releasing it maybe on Monday or Tuesday. Moving on to news regarding UAE. The first news that I'd like to talk about is that Dubai blockchain investment firm is revolutionizing Hollywood with NFTs. So the two firms which are involved is DIG, that is Dubai Investment Group, and BRON Studios. Dubai Investment Group is located in Burj Khalifa, the 143rd floor. So really posh building. DIG believes is decentralization is the future, and that building products that promote equitable, accessible, and trusted open system will promote individual liberty and economic freedom around the world. And this quote is by Hayden Snape, who is the managing partner and CEO. If you go to DIG or Dubai Investment Group's Instagram post, on the Instagram post they have mentioned that they have raised $20 million as capital, and 16 pioneering blockchain projects DIG has already delivered. So in an Instagram post, there's also Justice Picalis, who is the president, Decentralized Investment Group. He has put up a 4-minute long video. Really recommend you guys to go ahead and check it, where he talks about how DIG is more of a holding company and it has different firms associated with Decentralized Investment Group. And he also has Jordan Belfort from the Wolf of Wall Street as a board of advisors. He has a podcast with Jordan Belfort as well. I really am not sure if that is a good idea. Jordan Belfort might be famous, but is he the right person for decentralized cryptocurrencies? I really am not sure. Now, DIG is also a member of Crypto Oasis, and Crypto Oasis is more like an association in UAE, and they have a tie-up with Switzerland and different venture capital funds as well. BRON Studios, they were founded in 2010, and they are located in British Columbia, and the website is bronstudios.com. Now, BRON Studios is a prolific, award-winning creator of motion pictures, television series, digital animation, and non-scripted content, and BRON is a worldwide media and entertainment company committed to furthering the art and craft of meaningful commercial storytelling. Based on the website, it says that BRON has implemented and has been instrumental in more than 120 and has a robust sales of upcoming IP across all the platforms. BRON has been part of an outstanding 27 Academy Awards and 6 nominations. So they're definitely a heavy duty player. So both of them have tied up, that is Dubai Investment Group is working with BRON Studios in revolutionizing Hollywood with NFTs, and they have signed on with BRON Studios to create a Hollywood NFT collection linked to a much anticipated movie series. Dubai Investment Group's CEO, that is Hayden Snape, will be acting as the Web3 advisor to BRON Studios. What's going to happen is 10,000 piece NFT collection by Decentralized Investment Group is linked to BRON's Gossamer animated movie series. So Gossamer is an animated series and they're going to be releasing 10,000 piece NFT. This is where XYZZY kicks in. They are a firm, I believe, that just does the NFT and the blockchain part of it. This announcement was held during NYC.NFT week, garnered by celebrity-backed interest. Go through their Instagram profile. Looks like they're focusing more on building the Instagram, which does make sense when you're talking about NFTs and Hollywood. Does make sense to build your customer base via Instagram. So they have something called Gossamer Seed, and Gossamer Seed NFT collection got sold out in under 2 hours, and Gossamer Seed NFT was number 1 in OpenSea charts. Now, to be honest, I could not get much information about Gossamer Seed. Most likely during the presentation in NYC is when they actually went ahead and explained it to them. DIG is working with XYZZY and creating an NFT on behalf of BRON Studios, and Hayden Space is acting as a board advisor for BRON Studios. So DIG and its gaming subsidiary, the Miami-based Metaverse gaming company XYZZZ, will be bringing the virtual world with real world. So the website for XYZZY is xyzzy.ai. I'll just try to share some information of what XYZZY is. XYZZY bridges the virtual world with the physical, enabling true digital economies to exist and thrive. And they work on blockchain games, NFT collections, tokenized ownership, virtual world. XYZZY, powered by DIG, will be creating 10,000 piece NFT collection to accompany BRON's newest release, an 8-episode animated movie series called Gossamer. XYZZY's collection of NFTs will be of the series characters voiced by those Hollywood stars. XYZZY will also create a play-to-earn, massively multiplayer online role-playing game called as MMORPG based on the show, making it the first series to be coming to TV and Web3 simultaneously. So this is definitely going to be really interesting. I cannot say that I'm excited for it unless I actually see it. Then I might be in a position to give a much better idea. The next news that I'd like to talk about is the definition of Bitcoins. Now, in this particular episode, we would be looking at the definition of Bitcoin. So there are different definitions of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a digital coin, internet of money, digital money, and lately Bitcoin is often called as digital gold, and Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency as well. All of these definitions of Bitcoin are definitely true, but the proper definition of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Now let's break it down. What is it that we mean by peer-to-peer electronic cash system? And the reason why this is the proper definition of Bitcoin is because this is what is mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper written by the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto. So let's try to explore what is it that we mean by peer-to-peer and electronic cash system. Now, in order to understand what is peer-to-peer, let's take an example of a current existing system. So let's say if there is Alice who wants to send funds to Bob, and Alice, let's say for instance, wants to send US dollar or Great British pounds, pesos, or Indian rupees or dirhams. With current existing systems, Alice will have to use a central entity that could be in the form of a bank, Western Union, Quick Collect, PayPal, Central Bank, or Venmo, or Cash App. Now, these central entities are often associated with high fees. Apart from that, They also have KYC, that is know your customer. But more importantly, the transactions do take a lot of time. In case of Alice and Bob, in certain areas, in certain geographical restrictions, it could take up to 20 days. In places like El Salvador, and for instance, let's say if an El Salvadorian wants to send funds to their relatives in US, it could probably take much more than 20 days as well. More importantly, the transactions can be rejected. Now this is the problem that you have with a central entity being involved between Alice and Bob. Now what happens with Bitcoin? In case of Bitcoin, if let's say Alice wants to send Bitcoins to Bob, there is absolutely no middle person. Now because there is no middle person, it means that there is no KYC or know your customer. Now with reference to fees, there is definitely fees involved, but the fee structure works a little bit different to current existing banking system or financial institutions, which I'll be explaining it probably in a later episode. The most important thing to note is that when you're talking about transactions with Bitcoin, the transactions cannot be stopped. So when Alice wants to send funds to Bob, there is no middle person, no KYC, the fees are there, but the transactions cannot be stopped. The transactions could take place within a matter of seconds and a maximum of, let's say, 10 to 12 minutes. So there is no limit on the funds that can be transferred using Bitcoin. With case of current existing systems, usually the bank has a set amount of limit. In case of Bitcoin, there is absolutely no limit. A quick recap, what is peer-to-peer? That means that there is no middle person, no central entity, no KYC, reduced fees, transactions cannot be stopped. Now the second part of the definition, that is electronic cash system. This is where things like proof of work kicks in, and this is the consensus protocol that Bitcoin uses. And Bitcoin mining, so essentially when Alice sent funds to Bob, there are a bunch of miners that are spread all across the world. Now what these miners do is they update the transactions onto the ledger or the block of the blockchain network. Now because they are updating the ledger, they are rewarded with mining rewards. So miners are essentially rewarded with X number of Bitcoin every 10 to 12 minutes. And I'm pretty much sure you might have heard of halving of Bitcoin, which I will be exploring it in detail in one of the later episodes. Also, there are different forks of Bitcoin or different types of Bitcoin. The most important thing to note is that the supply of Bitcoin is fixed. Now these are the things that fall into the category of electronic cash system. So when you talk about the definition of Bitcoin, essentially it is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Let's take it in comparison with fiat currencies such as the US dollar, Great British pounds, or the Indian rupees, or even the dirhams. One thing to note is that the demand and supply. In case of fiat currency, the demand is variable, and the reason why it is variable is because the supply is also variable. Governments can print money at will. In case of Bitcoin, the supply is fixed. Now because the supply is fixed, that is the reason why the demand keeps on fluctuating, and it is the only reason why you see the volatility in the price of Bitcoin. So the supply of Bitcoin is fixed, it absolutely cannot be changed. Because of that, there is an increase or decrease in the demand, and hence you see the price of Bitcoin going up and down. Now the next thing that I'd like to talk about, and this is quite important, and this is the pillars of open blockchain and Bitcoin, and this is popularized by Andreas Antonopoulos. Now there are 6 criteria for Bitcoin and open blockchain. The first one being it is open source. Now what we mean by that is that the code of Bitcoin is completely open source. Absolutely anyone can check it in any part of the world. Transactions between Bitcoin are completely permissionless. You do not need prior permission from absolutely anyone for using Bitcoin. In case of current existing system, you need to get your banking approved from the bank, and they do KYCs, and you need prior permission. Let's take an instance. Let's say if an American wants to send funds to, let's say, someone in Iran, because of sanctions, the transactions cannot go through, so you need prior permissions. In case of Bitcoin, the transactions are permissionless. Transactions are censorship resistant. Now, because there is no central intermediary involved, the transactions absolutely cannot be stopped. Neutral. Now, what we mean by neutral is that the value of using Bitcoin in UAE is the same as using Bitcoin in, let's say, India, China, Afghanistan, United States of America, or absolutely anywhere in the world. So neutral means the value of using Bitcoin is the same in any part of the world. And Bitcoin is borderless. You can send Bitcoin from one person to another wherever he or she is living. And finally, Bitcoin transactions are publicly verifiable, which means, let's say if Alice sent funds to Bob, anyone can go ahead and check or validate these transactions. Now, with current existing systems, it's only the bank and the person who is using the transactions know the details of the transactions. But in case of Bitcoin, all the transactions are 100% publicly verifiable. As a matter of fact, you do not need to even own Bitcoin. What you do is you go to Bitcoin Explorer and anyone can validate these transactions. So the pillars of open blockchain are: it is open source, permissionless, censorship resistant, neutral, borderless, and publicly verifiable. And this is popularized by Andreas Antonopoulos. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the decimals of Bitcoin in comparison to fiat currencies. So let's take an instance for the US dollar. You have $99.99. So essentially there are 2 decimals. But in case of Bitcoin, there are 8 decimals. If you look at the value of Bitcoin, it will ideally look as 0.00000001. So the last number that you see, the smallest fraction of Bitcoin, is called a Satoshi or Sats. So you would always, in case if you're trying to shop online, so probably in the next decade or so, when you're trying to buy things online, you would see the value of items be denominated in Sats or Satoshis. And again, going back to the demand and supply between the US dollar or fiat currency versus Bitcoin, you need to understand that the supply is unlimited. The government can create unlimited amount of fiat currency. In case of Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. So that is the definition of Bitcoin. It is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's all for today, guys, from the Crypto and Coffee at 8 from Blockchain DXB. In case if you guys have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. You can also check out my website, that is www.blockchaindxb.com. You can also check out my other website, that is area2071.com, which talks everything about Metaverse. If you like listening to this, please follow this podcast, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. Now for the next 30 minutes, it's going to be an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions about Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. Hey everyone, it's George from Blockchain DXB. You're listening to the Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions about Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. Remember, Monday to Thursdays, 8 am to 8:30 am, we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. This is followed by 2 news and information related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East from the cryptocurrency world. What you're listening to right now is the Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners can ask any questions about Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. I have a first question, and this question is by Brendan, who asks, what's the update on Celsius Network? Now, Brendan, to be honest, I am really not sure what the future of Celsius Network looks like. A couple of weeks ago, there were rumors that Alex Mashinsky, who's the CEO of Celsius Network, was trying to flee the country. Turns out that's not the case, but it was his relatives who were trying to leave the country. So overall, definitely not looking good for Celsius Network. That being said, customer funds are still locked. And one thing which I just read earlier today was that Celsius Network has decided to lay off 150 employees. So definitely not looking good. Things are going from bad to worse for Celsius Network. Now earlier today, Wall Street Journal had also written an article that the customers of Celsius Network are losing their hope and all the funds are being locked up. Now what Celsius Network used to do is, let's say if I have a couple of Bitcoins, I could lend it to Celsius Network and they would give me a couple of interest as returns. What Celsius Network would then do is give my Bitcoins to someone else, and because of their contacts, they would earn an X number of interest. So let's say by lending the Bitcoins, they would earn 20%. Out of that 20%, they would give some interest back to me. Now this also has a danger. What if the person whom they have lent the funds to, what if that gets liquidated? Celsius does not have funds to give it to us, and that looks like that is exactly what has happened. A few weeks ago, they did plan to have an Ask Me Anything series, but Alex Mashensky posted on YouTube and he talked about how they had to pause the Ask Me Anything series. Now, this is both good and bad. The good thing is, it's good that Alex Mashensky did not talk anything about it, because if he does talk anything about it legally, anything he says could go against Celsius Network. And the bad thing is, we as customers do not know absolutely what's going on. Simon Dixon, Brandon, is the key person between all of this thing, because Simon Dixon did talk about a reviving Celsius Network, and he did put out a tweet which talked about how using current existing centralized system, there is no way Celsius Network could get back on. Now Simon Dixon is the CEO and co-founder of Bank to the Future, and I'm sure he's heavily invested in Celsius Network. What he proposed was something what happened to Tether, which I'll just talk about in a few minutes, Brandon. What he's talking about is what Celsius Network can do is issue security token offering. So what he will do is they will get a couple of investors who are willing to have faith in Celsius Network and give him funds to recoup that business, pay back the customers, and get the business started, and eventually in the next coming weeks, months or years, make profit out of them and return the investors with high interest rate. This is exactly what Simon Dixon had done with Tether USDT back in 2018 or 19, I believe. The bank that Tether USDT used to bank with had roughly around $800 million, and they refused to give Tether USDT their funds. So what they decided back then was to have an same plan like this. They had a security token offering called as Leo USD. So this is very much of a private investor, so it's a security token offering, who gave Tether USDT some funds, and in return for trusting in Tether USDT, they were provided with a much higher interest rate. So that is something which he is working on with Celsius Network. Either ways, I just hope that everyone are absolutely safe. So it looks like Celsius Network may be actively looking at investors, and these investors may be given a heavy returns. Again, they are trying to issue a security token offering, so there is due diligence for that. So that might be the only plan that Celsius Network has. I have another question by Rajri, who asks, you have said in the past that Ethereum will overtake Bitcoin. When will that happen? Just a bit of clarification, Rajri. I did say that Ethereum will overtake Bitcoin only in terms of market cap, not in terms of price. Now, I do realize that I did say that at least 6 months ago, and back then I told it to be 18 months. So now I would say that it may be as little as 12 months. Now, let me just quickly have a look at the numbers, Rajri, so we get a better idea of where the standing is. Now, I'm looking at the market cap of Bitcoin, and Rajri, I'm just shocked that the market cap of Bitcoin alone is $368 billion. Just to give you a perspective, the market cap of Bitcoin was around $1.3 trillion. So it looks like over $1 trillion has been wiped off from Bitcoin just in this year alone. This is really scary metric. Sorry, I digress. So the market cap of Bitcoin is $368 billion. The market cap of Ethereum is $130 billion. I believe the maximum Ethereum's market cap was around $550. I could be wrong though. So what we need to look at, Rostri, is two things. One is the market cap, that is $368 billion for Bitcoin, $130 billion for Ethereum, and the next is the 24-hour trading volume. Now, the 24-hour trading volume for Bitcoin is $16 billion, and for Ethereum is $8 billion. Now, these are really, really rookie numbers. and the numbers are extremely low. But what I do think is maybe in 18 months or maybe 12 months is when Ethereum would actually flip Bitcoin. Now, a couple of things that you need to look at, Rosary. The moment Ethereum transitions to Ethereum consensus layer, or formerly called as Ethereum 2.0, that's when I think it picks up a lot of pace. Could this happen in the next 18 months? We might have to wait and see. Last week we talked about an upgrade called as Great Glacier upgrade that happened, and the upgrade was successful. What it does is, Rosary just moves us one step closer to the Ethereum consensus layer. But Rosary, think of it. What if Apple, Facebook, Google, Tesla, any one of these giants completely accepts Ethereum? More importantly, they announce they are accepting Ethereum both as a store of value and a medium of exchange. Trust me, I wouldn't be surprised in a month's time Ethereum could actually flip Bitcoin. It just takes one company. Let's say Tesla puts out a tweet tomorrow that we find Ethereum extremely helpful and we are going to accept Ethereum as a medium of exchange and as a store of value as well. What Tesla can do is they can also run their electric cars on the Ethereum network. How that's going to happen, that might take a couple of years to figure it out. But if they make that announcement, I wouldn't be surprised, Rotary. In that case, Ethereum might flip Bitcoin. Ethereum just might flip Bitcoin maybe in a month's time or so. One thing which I did say at the beginning of this podcast, personally, I'm not a fan of Ethereum as a project. I don't think there is much use case for blockchain technology. Bitcoin is the only thing that we need. But nonetheless, Ethereum might flip Bitcoin maybe in 12 months, or if there's a major financial institution accepting Ethereum both as a store of value and as a medium of exchange, and if they're running the entire operations on Ethereum. A couple of weeks ago, Facebook announced that they are starting to accept Polygon using Ethereum, and users can essentially display their NFTs. That is working on Ethereum via Polygon, and Instagram is doing exactly the same thing. But if there's a massive announcement, that's when I think it picks up pace. Also, Rachi, there are 5 stages for Ethereum to move to consensus layer: the merge, the surge, the verge, the purge, the splurge. And all of these 5 stages are taking place at the same time, simultaneously. It's not one after the other. And one thing which I mentioned earlier also is that Bankless has an excellent episode. They have 3 episodes, in fact. One is with Team Bako, which just got released last month. I would definitely urge you to go and listen to that. They also have 2 episodes with Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, where they discuss all of these 5 stages. So you're looking at least 4 to 5 hours worth of podcast listening to get an accurate assessment of where Ethereum was, where it currently is, and where it will be. Now, on the 7th of this month at 2 p.m. Gulf Standard Time, Ratri, I also have an Ethereum beginner's guide, so I'll definitely be talking more information about it. It is at a beginner level, no technical expertise is needed, and it is a free event, so you can go to eventbrite.com or drop me an email to info@blockchain.dxb. I'll send you the link where I'm keeping that session. So that's all for today, guys, from the Ask Me Anything series from Blockchain DXB. In case if you guys have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. You can also check out my website, that is www.blockchaindxb.com. And if you like listening to this, please follow this podcast, give it a 5-star rating, and please share the word across. And I have another website called Area 2071 that talks everything about Metaverse. Remember, guys, Monday to Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes on the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other 2 news and information is related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. What you're listening to right now was the Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners could ask any questions about Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.